Uh, Quick roll call before we get going. Ricky Jackson, chair, present.
Jeremiah Guy Williams, member, present.
Alexander April, member, present. Bobby Thomas, vice chair, present.
All right. And with that, we will go ahead and open up to public comment. So, Pam, if you are ready, got 3 minutes for you.
Yeah, can I, those, you can
Yeah.
take one and pass them on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So, Next Gen, thanks for moving the meeting and making sure I can be here. I wanted to talk about a couple of things on the agenda. Quarterly goal setting. I have heard you talk about doing economic development support, and I'm gonna urge you not to do that. This job is about public service and it's about the powers of government and what government does. We have staff who do economic development, but I think the purpose of this board is to help people who are younger get more civics information and prepare you for other boards and commissions with more responsibility as you go up by learning the procedures here and learning the relationship of, let's say, local, county, state, and federal government and how they interplay, and grants are really important and stuff like that. Learn what the powers of government are and aren't, and you should serve the public in general. So I'm passing out a financial report. This is on our city website. This, I think, happens to be March because that's the latest revenue report available. So as far as economic development, let me point out in the pie chart that this project downtown's on your agenda. Downtown's 6% or something like that, which is great, but I'm gonna point out that it's the 2 hardware stores that are the big earners. And then District 3, the Broadway mineral area, bringing a lot of money in. That's the nature of the development there. It is a product of land use. It's not about whether we boost businesses or not, because we do that. We have a business chamber, we have a downtown development authority. Downtown gets too much. Look, there are like 11 or 12 areas there. To give 100 million to downtown would be wrong. And the city so far has not produced any integrated budget estimate for 40 years to show us how a major investment in downtown would pay off and how it would not be at the expense of the other areas. I, as a citizen, and all of you residents, should care about developing all of these areas, and I want to see them on management's plan before anything is done for Project Downtown. Much less the other boondoggles that are on there, the North Gateway, selling city property. That's never in the public interest in the long term, or almost never. Our government has not provided us with the data and evidence for these actions, radical actions that they're taking. And I would like you guys to be a check and balance on that. That's civics, that's your public duty, and you serve us, the public, in that way. And you as Next Gen are affected by these mistakes, major mistakes that our government is making. So please think about that. Ask for a 40-year budget estimate. And I'm going to say we don't really have the staff for that, but we need that planning. You need that, and we need that from you. I did want to mention that it's valuable, the sunshine laws and the stuff that you're learning about that, it was kind of presented to you as a burden or a problem. And I want to let you know that inclusion of the public and the sunshine laws are vital. They are the minimum to prevent abuse of the public, but please always welcome the public. And the more you are, the more of us will show up and participate and support you. So please think about that. Housing needs and safer streets. We need to do more for housing rather than do these weird development things. Is it time?
Just about, you can finish your thought.
Then I'd like to see us subsidize housing that is affordable, accessible, and sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. All right. With that, we'll keep moving through our agenda. So we have a very special guest today on the topic of Project Downtown. So Adrian, thank you for joining us and sharing so much about you before the meeting started. We're thrilled to have you. And this time we'll hear a little bit more from a presentation that's probably very near and dear to your heart. So thank you for being here today, and the floor is yours. Folks, if you have questions throughout, would it be better just to ask as we're going through it since we're in
Please
a smaller
do,
room
yeah,
today?
yeah,
Okay.
I've definitely reserved time at the end for more questions, but yeah, just jump in wherever, that's totally fine.
Okay.
Should we note your recent promotion?
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the title. She was the director of big things.
Director of bigger things.
Director of major projects. It's a little shorter than the old one, so thank you, I appreciate it. Very excited.
Congratulations.
I thank you,
We'll
and
put her
thank you
cute
for
picture
asking
on
me to be here
Instagram.
tonight. Well, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed my time here with the city of Littleton, and there are so many big things on the horizon here. Working with the city council has been fantastic. Working with this community has been amazing. There are a lot of considerations right now. There are a lot of competing priorities in the community, and so it's been a really exciting time. And Project Downtown's one of those big things that's on the table right now. So thank you for asking me to be here tonight. I am Adrienne Burton, Director of Major Projects, and I was the project manager for Project Downtown, our concept plan. This plan was adopted by City Council in November of 2024. And tonight I'm going to provide an overview of the planning process. We'll start with where this project came from. I'm going to share the preferred concept, talk through the implementation plan and cost estimates, and then we'll wrap up with next steps. So for tonight, the focus is on your perspective, how this plan reflects long-term priorities for Littleton's next generation, and I'll also flag overlaps with next week's City Council discussion on long-term financing. So some overlap, if you look at the presentation that is available now for next Tuesday's study session, there's some content in there that it's definitely relevant to tonight's conversation. So origins of Project Downtown. This plan builds on years of visioning. Envision Littleton identified mobility and placemaking as top priorities. The Transportation Master Plan, or TMP, called for complete streets. The LDDA, our Littleton Downtown Development Authority, the plan of development reinforced the importance of Main Street as the city's centerpiece. In 2018, Denver Water approached the city and identified the need to replace a very old water main in downtown along Main Street. And that really helped catalyze the part of this project. And finally, the voter approved ballot measure 3A, that sales tax measure, created a funding stream to help us accelerate this work. And so all of those threads came together to get us to this point of adopting this concept plan. So Project Downtown is about more than the street. It's about preserving Littleton's cultural heritage, supporting the small business, future-proofing infrastructure, promoting health and wellness, addressing decades of underinvestment, and it's about creating a downtown that will serve the community for the next generation. We're not only fixing current issues, but building flexibility into the system so it adapts to future needs. Sorry, excuse me. So recently, Public Works completed an assessment of the downtown infrastructure in Main Street, and they compared the assets in downtown against assets throughout the greater city. So while several of those components ranked fairly even with other assets throughout the city, they did note that there were several components such as crosswalk, trees, paving, event power connections, the overhead traffic signal systems that really were clear weaknesses. The sidewalks themselves, because it's such a heavily trafficked area for pedestrians, there's some clear ADA weaknesses there, so definitely warrant some improvements downtown. So overall, Public Works said, downtown clearly has some aging infrastructure. There has not been a capital improvement plan that's been focused around addressing that, but they said downtown really does warrant some serious investment here. So this photo captures Main Street as it exists today. You can see that while the street is functional, it does lack those activation and placemaking features. The sidewalks are narrow, broken up by various obstacles. It limits that space for outdoor dining, public art, social gathering. We lost the tree canopy right before this project kicked off, which was really difficult with the community because that's all we heard about for a while. And so, yes, that's a really important component for a lot of healthy downtowns. But we had to get past that, and so it was letting them know we hear you, but what else does it take to create a really vibrant, active downtown? So that was definitely a tough starting point. But the street is dominated by cars. We have 2 travel lanes. This is a majorly trafficked east-west thoroughfare for the city of Littleton. Crosswalks and paving treatments are worn. There's very little in the way of event infrastructure. I think we have 6 functional outlets right now, so it's a really big challenge when we do have events downtown. The absence of greenery, flexible seating, interactive elements just leaves the corridor feeling more like a pass-through space than a destination. In short, Main Street works as a roadway, but it doesn't function as a place. So that's why this project was really aimed at bringing activation and placemaking comfort back to downtown and appealing to a variety of different ages, groups, folks. We heard a lot about people wanting to bring their children downtown. There's not a lot of opportunity for that. So that was one of those really great points that came up a lot. This is the second angle that shows current conditions. You see the degrading pavement, that loss of canopy, that it's really impactful. The overhead utilities that still exist. In short, again, we're really just wanting to bring back the character that Main Street used to have with a lot of those warmer, more inviting components. And so in this slide, you can see some of those. This image here on the right, that's just from 15 years ago. And that's a fresh mill and overlay, some fresh paint, some fresh striping. That's the tree canopy. It's clearly on its decline there already. But this really just shows that downtown has gone through multiple iterations. And there have been some distinct design decisions. If you're familiar with the concrete pods, in rendering, they actually are really cool. I think they're a really cool architectural component. Maybe not an application. Supposedly the footings are still all there under the sidewalks. So
That's cool.
but then, when we made the choice to plant those honey locusts collectively 35 to 40 years ago, unfortunately, planting a monoculture of one species made them susceptible to disease. And so they all were taken out by Thrionectria canker. And so basically the interior, if you remember the technical
No, this was
term,
before me, my
okay,
time.
they
Yeah.
turned to goo.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so turned to the technical term. So they were just, it was a huge loss for the city. And, candlelight walk downtown, obviously that's a very sentimental memory for a lot of people. So we have the opportunity to learn from these past choices, position ourselves for the next iteration of downtown, applying best practices in urban forestry. We know we can achieve that canopy again in the conditions that we have, because trees require, healthy trees in an urban environment require significantly more space. They can't be planted that close together. They need much more to support a healthy growing environment. So 88 trees on Main Street is just not something that you would see. So by using best practices in urban forestry and civil engineering, we can create a design that's more resilient and timeless. So that means choosing diverse, durable species, building stronger infrastructure, and balancing that historic character that's so important to this community with modern needs. And the goal is just to create a downtown that thrives for decades without repeating the same vulnerabilities. So the project schedule, the request for proposal for planning consultant services was issued in the fall of 2022, and the project kicked off internally in the spring of 2023. The first engagement phase was in late summer of 2023. This informed the development of the project vision, goals, and objectives, which also informed the development of 3 concept alternatives that were developed. So if you want to learn more about those, you can go to our project website, which is still up to date. It's City of Littleton, or littletonco.gov/project downtown. So all of the project documents are on there, this project story map. You can go follow the whole trajectory of the planning process on there. And you can see the original concepts and really how where the preferred alternative came from. But all of that informed the final concept, and that was refined in the final engagement phase. So overall, there were 1,700 direct community touch points with individual people that were engaged in the process, but a much more widespread outreach through the Littleton Report Online, the print edition, surveys, print materials, social media, emails, mailers, pop-up events, going to existing events in the community to just spread awareness about what was going on. And at the final community open house, we had 130 participants, which was great, because usually we see a decrease. And so seeing that participation increase throughout the planning process was great. So between the three alternatives, the village concept, which doesn't mean much until you can look at the three concepts, but the village concept was the one that emerged as the community favorite. And we were really looking to the community to inform the results of all of this work. And so we took their input from the survey to move everything forward. And so this was not a consultant-led process, this was a community-led process. The village, again, emerged as the favorite. And so there were some pieces that were blended from the other concepts. Prince Street was identified as the north-south bike connection. And then stakeholders also wanted some placemaking elements to not just be in the middle 2 blocks of Main Street, but really to be on all 4 blocks of Main Street. So the preferred plan resulted in these recommended 5 major projects. So the first is Main Street, second is Prince Street, third is Alamo Avenue, fourth is Nevada Street, and 5 is Little's Creek Trail. So this rendering shows how Main Street is reimagined in this preferred alternative. Keep in mind, this is a conceptual plan. This is not a final design. It's a grand vision. We're not building from this. There would still be a robust design process with additional public engagement opportunities if we were to move forward into a design phase. But funding would determine what the city could achieve as part of a phase 1 implementation. Trees are expensive, and the infrastructure required to support that, those are expensive. And so if we're really looking at a budget of what's on the table right now of around $27.5 million, we might just be putting trees in. So this is a high dollar concept plan here. So just keep that in mind. I think that with these concept plans, it is all about setting that tone of a grand vision. But they're very hard to achieve, and it's all about the available funding. So the most notable change is the curbless street that was proposed during 2020. The event, the dining that took place on Main Street, the temporary closures, that became really popular, and the need for just creating more delineation for that space, make more of a comfortable experience for the pedestrian, so you don't have the ankle breaking type situation in these type zones. There's a lot of curbless streets that are for these event type streets that are popping up, and there are a lot of different design solutions to make those pretty interesting to handle, separation for the visually impaired or for traffic control. So there's a lot of considerations there for how to manage all of that. But that makes the street adaptable. Cars can use it on regular days, but it can also be closed off seamlessly for events, festivals, or markets. You'll notice the sidewalks are much wider as well. And there's more of a generous zone for outdoor dining, public art, and landscaping. And these spaces are meant to invite people to linger and not just pass through. Planters and trees are, sorry.
Fancy the lights on.
Yeah, I know, man, I gave it away. Yeah.
All done, it's over.
That was the big moment. These spaces are designed to, I said that already. So planters and trees are strategically placed to provide shade and soften the street environment. And learning from our honey locust experience, we propose a diverse mix of resilient species. Honey locusts are still great trees for Colorado, but not the only. Yeah. So this is Main Street at night. We heard a lot about that event space, the lighting came up over and over again. More opportunity for the night events. We want, nobody said Larimer Street, but they said like that. But they, just something to activate, something to encourage more of that. So again, this isn't necessarily what it would look like, but this is the feel of what the community was going for. So overall, curbless, flexible streets, widened sidewalks, diverse tree canopy and lighting, placemaking those, infrastructure upgrades, and historic feel, maintaining that and that modern flexibility for a timeless but a future-ready downtown. And then this is a perspective on Main Street. These materials are just conceptual, so it doesn't mean we're putting brick pavers on. Is very, very expensive. But our consultant teams really liked those textures for the sake of the rendering. And then these trees are obviously a little more mature. So this gives you a sense though of what that activation could look like potentially during the day, with more dining out on the street, but more of a clear corridor for the pedestrian against the buildings. I encourage you to go down on Main Street and look down the street, and you can see all the obstacles. And it is tough to navigate. And if you think about somebody that is navigating that in a wheelchair, any kind of mobility challenges, it is a challenging environment. Or you have 3 children that you're trying to get through there safely. There needs to be a little more room to get through there.
Agreed.
And this shows some of the additional features, the banners, the hanging planters, the new lighting that you would see, some of the wayfinding components. So some of those special touches, the seating walls with the planting beds. You could start to introduce some pollinator gardens potentially there. That's where you could bring in some educational collaboration things with the botanical gardens. So there's a lot of opportunity there where you could have some really cool things with the schools in the area and the botanical gardens. So some fun programs to think about. So I'm jumping ahead. So this is in plan view. This shows the curbless solution. The curbless solution is limited to those 2 interior blocks between Curtis and Prince. However, the additional amenities still exist on the sidewalks all the way between Rapp Street and to Rio Grande. So that was really important to the community as well as the businesses and merchants downtown. So it feels very democratic, but curbless solutions are expensive, and we'll get into the cost estimates. But even the sidewalks themselves, you'll see they're just as expensive, even without the curbless street. So what's required with just moving the flow line for the stormwater, all of that, once you start to touch that, it gets tricky. And anytime you go underground, you never really know what you're gonna touch. And we've always talked about maybe we'll find a dinosaur.
It's happened before.
Yeah. And you can see in plan view, there's bump outs, there's with the planter walls. So there's a little bit of that interest just as you're moving down Main Street, where there's these nice little nodes where you can meet with people, and you have some rooms along the street.
Question.
Yeah.
Is Main Street really 60 feet wide?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, yep. From face of building to face of building,
Interesting.
yeah,
You're gonna count it next time you walk.
I know, I was like,
Yeah.
it isn't, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know, it's
basically
pretty
4 lanes in
wide.
most part, just 2 traffic lanes, 2 parking lanes, 2
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
pretty big
true.
sidewalks.
And some of the sidewalks are pretty wide in certain areas, but
Yeah.
they're eaten up by a lot of different things up there. So Prince Street, this is a north-south corridor. This shows a very high comfort bike facility. And so there are north and south off-street protected bike lanes that run the full length of Prince Street. It ties into projects that are going to be occurring south of the project area, as well as future projects happening to the north. They're physically separated from traffic, providing safe connections for all ages and abilities. There's also wider sidewalks, so expanded pedestrian zones allow for that outdoor seating, again, walking groups or street vendors. It makes Prince a more comfortable connector, and it's not just a pass through a street. That's one of those streets where you go out and there's so much opportunity. It's a huge street. And it's very dangerous to navigate as a pedestrian currently. And you can, it's such an important entry into downtown, and you can see the opportunity for how you can slow traffic down. And as people arrive in downtown, it's so important for them to slow and to recognize they're arriving somewhere really significant. And right now, it just does not have that type of feel. So special paving at intersections to calm traffic and make crossings more highly visible, safer for pedestrians moving east-west across Prince into Main Street. And Main Street also has those enhanced crossings as well. Green infrastructure and landscaping, so planter beds and street trees, and then additional areas to manage stormwater infiltration, and just to create a more comfortable environment for walking and biking. We'll see the street furnishings here as well, improved event connectivity. So during festivals, Prince can act as a north-south spine for biking and walking, and linking to Littles Creek Trail. And then traffic calming, so those narrow vehicle lanes will help slow speeds and prioritize safety for bikes and pedestrians without eliminating the car access. And so this is that in plan view. So keep in mind the green that you see, that would not be how that would, that's just for diagrammatic purposes. We would not paint those green. But the project's extents are Powers to Church and Prince Street link projects south of Church. That's one of the projects that this would connect to. And then Geneva Village north of Powers, there's an eventual project there. There's some proposed projects at Santa Fe and Prince in the future. I haven't actually heard an update on where that one stands recently, so hopefully more to come there. But this really will be that critical link to keep that high comfort bike facility going. So Alamo Avenue and Main Street. Today, Alamo carries traffic, but offers little comfort for pedestrians. What we're introducing is very similar to what you see on Main Street, kind of a different, little bit different, but provides that continuity of just context and materiality. You can see just a gateway as you move from Littleton Boulevard into downtown. So we placed it, and this is just a concept, but we placed it at the front of that bridge so you can really see it as you're going into downtown, to initiate that significance. Biga Park, and I'm going to point it out in this image because you can see it. Biga Park is definitely identified in LDDA's plan of development as an area for a focus for a future master plan initiative that the LDDA would lead in partnership with the city. However, through this planning process, and I think because it's such an underutilized space currently, nobody talked about it. We brought it up, we tried to talk about the importance of activating it, but it just was not a highlighted important feature. And so I think there's still so much opportunity to continue to focus on what happens there. Because I mean, especially when you look at this view and what could happen in the future, there's endless opportunities. So a lot of the same components that you see. So here's a rendering at street level. Bike facilities, that came up a lot, just having more central bike facility locations so people know, and making these are, again, more for the rendering to be more contextual, but people were very clear they like the U-shaped bike racks. They don't like artist versions of bike racks. They like just a regular old bike rack.
It's a hard one to update.
Yeah, you can't argue with it. So We heard a lot about that one. Yeah, but it's redesigned as a shared use corridor, so pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles coexist at low speeds. The design encourages slower driving and makes walking and biking safe and more comfortable. Distinctive paving at intersections and throughout the street signals. This is a pedestrian priority space. The patterning also creates a visual identity unique to Alamo, reinforcing the downtown character. So within that couplet, you just have that continuous character. And so Main Street isn't the only focus. The hope is if this is realized eventually, that public investment would help drive private investment eventually, but there's so much opportunity with the alley itself and what happens with the connections in between the streets. And so having that contextually sensitive materiality that's linking all of that is really, really important. So rebuilt pedestrian bridge across Little Creek. There's actually a project right now where they're working on the redesign for the Main Street bridge fence. Green infrastructure, pollinator plantings here as well. Street furnishings, lightings, same thing. Parking maintained on the north side on this plan. So you can see we would lose some parking on the south side. Parking, obviously, very important talking point for downtown. If we were to move forward with a phase one design, one of the really important components that the city would also be managing in partnership with the LDDA would be a parking management study or strategy, where we need to develop a true parking management plan for what's happening in downtown and not just Main Street, but the entire LDDA boundary area. There is the perception that there's a parking problem downtown for both people that work downtown, people that visit downtown. It's difficult to understand where to park. And so from the standpoint of just understanding where you can park, there are so many different technologies available for how to address that. So we would work with the community, with the merchants, to go through that process. And it would, that one is going to be a really tough conversation because there are people that are on either side where they feel like there's not a parking problem, and there are people that feel like there is absolutely a parking problem. So how to, find consensus and develop a parking management strategy that really can address those challenges and make sure that the people that are working downtown have adequate parking and that people that are coming downtown can safely find parking and get to downtown. But we have almost 700 spaces available at Arapahoe Community College. We have the spaces here at the Littleton City Center. So how can we partner with those places? We've talked about circulators and having buses. I mean, Pam has talked about some great ideas with that. And so being able to bring some more transit and make that available to people, so to not have limitations there. At Nevada Street, this is a shared street, which is, I think, can be an interesting concept. It is where people are prioritized over cars. Your speeds are very, very low, talking 5 miles an hour, and it's really just for local traffic to access, that private property there. This becomes that connection from ACC to downtown. In the Envision Littleton process, one of the things that came up was creating that connection and creating what they call it a heart walk, the Heritage Arts Recreation Tourism Walk. And so the Nevada Street became conceptualized as the way to do that. And so introducing a little more of a contemporary palette with some different materials, but still linking it to downtown, but it's kind of on the outside, a little bit further south of the historic downtown. So potentially introducing some pops of art, some things like that, but you have the pollinator gardens, but just giving more of an active space. There's a little coffee kiosk there, but you see the wayfinding, but yeah, just having a more of a connection. And, that also helps overcome that connection from parking that could be available at ACC to downtown and help eliminate some of those perception challenges. So this is the plan view, where you can see just some of the materiality changes and proposed connections. And then last, Little's Creek. This is the one that actually started to gain a lot of ground towards the end of the planning process. The community was really interested in that connection to the Mary Carter Greenway. This one is the one that needs the most exploration still because of, just being a creek and the channel itself that requires significant investigation. So this is at a very high level conceptual, just reimagining of what we could potentially do, but we're looking at naturalized edges of the stream, arc lighting, gathering spaces along the trail. Because it's such a narrow corridor, we still would have to come up to street level in certain places. We just don't have enough space to go under the road, and so based on the study that we were able to do for the purposes of this work, that would just warrant additional engineering and much more in-depth study. But this rendering, I think the consultant team did a great job with the mural there on the wall, but this gives a sense of what that naturalized edge to the stream. I mean, this kind of has that golden feel of where there's the opportunity to engage with the channel. There's some habitat areas, water quality, a little of that resilience that can grow, that can come back to the stream. There's the gathering spaces along the trail, a lot more active, more lighting, more art. Right now it's just such an underutilized area, and it just needs obviously some focus and some improvements. So it would double as a stormwater management zone as well, to help mitigate flooding and help support that long-term resilience of downtown infrastructure as well. And this just shows in plan view. You can see where Nevada Street crosses over. There's a pedestrian bridge there that is in need of repair currently. So why invest? Construction costs are escalating. The dollar that we have right now, it's diminishing every day. Downtown infrastructure is deteriorating. We know that. So at some point, we will need to start to address some of those things. We're going to find ourselves in facing more reactive and more emergency repairs in downtown, especially from the utilities, ADA repair side. Those are really important. We've positioned ourselves with TIP applications for some regional funding. We are acting now to ensure alignment with regional partners for maximizing that leverage. Project Downtown has been years in the making. We had the 3A ballot measure. We've created the Littleton Downtown Development Authority. We've had this enabling project with the Main Street, Denver Water mainline replacement, and then the Project Downtown concept plan adoption. And then downtown does contribute to the city's financial health, and to stay competitive with our peer cities. They're investing in their downtowns, and so the city really does need to consider looking at what we can do to make sure that we do remain competitive. So just a little bit, we are currently working on an economic impact study that's underway with a consultant team to better understand the return on investment if we were to realize these improvements, just really for Main Street. But just some quick numbers for you. So in Lancaster, California, the city spent $11.5 million on a 9-block road diet streetscape project. And within 4 years, there was $130 million in private investment that followed, that generated $273 million of economic output. And so that doubled their downtown revenues. So pretty significant. And so what they've seen so far through these comparative case studies is that public investment really does help drive that private investment and that catalytic growth. Locally here, Rhino Art District in Denver, it's close to 300 million in investment from the city and county of Denver, which resulted in about $2 billion in total private investment. And then Cherry Creek North, 18.5 million in bid bonds for that in streetscape overhaul, and that resulted in 1 billion in private projects that followed. And then downtown Castle Rock, I don't know if you're familiar with that area, it's pretty comparable to downtown Littleton in certain ways. Their $6 to $7 million investment in their festival park has resulted in $200 million in private investment since they've made those improvements. So at this stage of the project, we developed what's called a conceptual cost model. The type of model here is developed early in a planning process where detailed engineering drawings and quantities aren't available. And so the consultant team is building off of unit cost, quantity takeoffs from conceptual layouts, assumptions, and market adjustments. And so they're using higher contingencies for that. As the design process advances, that starts to come down as we get closer to having more refined documents and better understand. But the way this was developed was very, very detailed, and our consultant team had a very conservative approach. The engineer that developed this also worked on a project for City and County of Denver. It was the Platte to Park Hill major stormwater drainage project for the city. It was over $200 million worth of improvements. His original estimate started around, don't quote me, but it was somewhere around 215 million. The project ended up coming in under that. And so that's how finely tuned these models can be. And you just have to, continue to refine and just watch these things. But you have everything from all of your individual components, your hard cost and your soft cost, and then again, all those contingencies on top of that. We do not include escalation and inflation here because this is a point in time estimate. We don't know when we would come back. And so having that in here, it's just, we don't know. We're seeing escalation as high as 8%, which is significant, and inflation is all over the place. And so it's really difficult to navigate those numbers. So Main Street was selected by the community as the #1 priority. So Main Street was identified for a phase 1. And the conceptual cost estimate was 36.5 million. However, the city has identified about 27.5 million for what they potentially would put towards a phase 1. The additional projects obviously are further out, but aren't being considered at this point for additional funding. So the cost estimate breakdown for Main Street, this just gives you a little more information what's included in the major intersections and signal improvements. Is number 1. 2 are the roadway, streetscape, lighting, and sidewalk improvements. For Curtis to Prince Street, Rapp Street is number 3, roadways, streetscape, lighting, and sidewalk improvements, and then Prince Street to Rio Grande. So you can start to see 3 and 4 are pretty long segments as compared to 2 and 3. So people were curious about the discrepancies with some of the cost breakdowns, and so just wanted to understand that. And then this image really just shows if we touch one element, say the pavement, we inevitably affect sidewalks, lighting, utilities, or other features. And so coordinated sequencing is critical. By treating this as one comprehensive package, we really minimize that repeated disruption to downtown, and we maximize our efficiency, prevent waste, and we deliver a stronger long-term outcome for the community. So even with something like wayfinding and furnishings, there's a lot of coordination with something like that. Event infrastructure, but especially with utilities, you're really touching all of those things. So funding pathways, this is very timely because we are going to City Council next Tuesday night to talk more about this. Within the overlay of all the other priorities and kind of long-term needs for the city, where does this fall in terms of priorities? What are our different funding levers that we have available to us to pursue this or other things that are on the table right now? Two things that have been discussed are certificates of participation and general obligation bonds. Certificates of participation do not require a vote, and then general obligation bond, that's a ballot measure, and so that goes to the community. But this diagram on the right really just shows that diminished buying power over time, and paying as you go with cash, we would be saving for a really long time, and then we would just really not have any buying power by the time we were able to accrue the funding to actually do the project. This shows two potential schedule options. So each approach has its own implications for risk, timing, engagement, and capacity, and we are prepared to support either direction at council's discretion. Option one is potentially using COPs that would expedite the process a little bit. Option two would be a GEO bond, potentially next fall. And so they would be about a year off in terms of schedule. In terms of financial impact to the city, it would be about the same. However, it would be a mill levy property and tax, and so that burden would be shifted to the taxpayer rather than the COP, which would be on the city through our 3A fund. So our next steps are going to council next Tuesday night. So I would encourage you to come to the study session or listen online. Like I said, it's going to be a very meaty, long conversation.
So we have a lot of items.
We do, and we just got pushed to the end, I saw. So we'll have a lot to talk about.
I gotta take a nap.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll go past 10.
Bring some snacks.
Yeah, I'll bring something to supplement.
I've started copying Gretchen. I have food in my bag.
I know, I always have some emergency peanut butter M&Ms. So any questions? Can I go back to anything?
Thanks.
That's awesome. Thank you for all the detail.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's you might say it's a major project.
You need a major project director.
I'm waiting for the end of that so I can use it.
Too good.
Thank you, well timed. No, I think this is really interesting, and just if I'm just speaking out loud, I think one thing that draws people to Littleton is that we have that main street. I will say in the very teeny tiny town that I grew up in, just north of Colorado Springs, tried to say they had that. They don't. They still don't. So it's cool to finally live in a place that has that outside of Fort Collins. It's a school there, so that's different. But what it made me think of was the book called The Great Good Place, and it talks about third spaces. If you're familiar with it. Yeah. And so when I see something like Project Downtown, and I think about like the next generation, which hopefully I can still reap the benefits of. I'm not that old, so so there's plenty of time for me to be there. You'll be there too. That coffee stand seems like we're going to be meeting up there.
I'm going to be selling that in my retirement.
but it made me think about how that feels like something that right now is in flux. As we kind of have all these different generations that are coming of age and trying to establish themselves. They have their home, they have their place of school or work. But what are we offering outside of that? And sure, there's restaurants on Main Street. The brewery scene, which is near and dear to my heart, still is doing okay. But just thinking about like if that's not your thing, or where do you go if you're 16? When I was 16 in Monument, the only thing we had was a Walmart. So you can imagine the trouble we found in that. And so that's kind of what this project makes me think about. We think about where can we help support or talk more about creating third spaces. And that's something that, I just, as we were talking through, that made me really think about that. And then also, living abroad, there are pedestrian only zones, right? And where I lived abroad in Ireland, you couldn't go there, with a vehicle. And so it forces you to find things to do and be with people and interact. So I really like some of the things that I saw there of, you have a place to kind of be and you don't have to be completely car dependent. I don't think Littleton is ever going to move away from our dependency as Americans. We just have a hard time with that. We're not built for it from the infrastructure, but those are things that I was kind of thinking of as we were presenting and kind of got me hyped just for, being a citizen and seeing that come into life too. So.
Great, thank you. Yeah, one thing we heard, somebody asked me in the last public meeting, what was the theme that really connected all of these major projects that were identified for Project Downtown together? And it was community gathering. That was the thing that we heard over and over again. And from every age group, every age category, people want spaces to linger, to gather with their community, the entire community. And so I think that is such an important thing. However, if this is able to move forward, we have to get that right in how it's designed and how it plays off of the existing historic structures, what that looks like. It's so important. And I think there's some great examples out there where there's these really small areas for play for children in these beautiful historic downtowns, next to these really nice seating areas, next to these green infrastructure zones. And so you can have these really dynamic amenity zones. But again, you have to get it right. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think the sidewalk is one that, is important to me. Just now that I have a large family, I, can barely hold everyone on the sidewalk. As you're talking, I was like, oh boy, yeah, bring it on. So and obviously, I think the other thing too, like you said, is that there's a lot of conversations that are coming up that are going to be telling about what this looks like, and what you shared could potentially have big changes, right, in terms of what's available and how the city council kind of sees that coming to life. And I think that's the thing that I keep reminding myself is that this could be a long phased event, and that doesn't have to be what we saw. But if we started with trees, I know my little group of people would be thrilled about trees. Which is one of those silly things where it's like choose what you want, right? Cafeteria plan. But anyway, I'm rambling off of my sleep deprivation, so I'll shut up now.
Trees were number one.
Yeah.
So you said in your presentation that Vega Park was underutilized. What did you mean by that exactly?
It's very rarely do you ever see anybody there. It's never activated. It can be used for events occasionally, but from a day-to-day standpoint, you don't see people having lunch there. You don't see families just hanging out there. It's definitely not a space for having an urban park just right next to your historic downtown. It's incredibly underutilized. So what is it about that? Is it because there's a street that goes through there? Is it because there are a lot of trees? Are there not enough amenities within the park itself? Is there not enough lighting? What is it that keeps people from coming there to bring their lunch and hang out with their kids? I don't know. But it was just it's not thought about as an amenity down there. And we don't have much green space in this area. We have Geneva and we have Vega Park.
We've always said, my wife and I, should get some food trucks in there on the weekends and just more sitting and allow some of the breweries to do beer stands or something, whatever. And just because I forget about it half the time, and I have spent a lot of time there, but you don't pass through it naturally coming to downtown unless you're coming down Boulevard, but usually you're coming in a car in that case, and then you drive right past it.
Right.
If you're biking, you're going up Prince Street, and usually a lot of the time. So, that's a weird one. I don't know. I would love to figure out how to get people more engaged with that. That's a fascinating problem.
Yeah, and so I look forward to hopefully the LGDA, eventually moving forward with a master plan just for that small space and how that can connect to everything down there and really activate that space. Could be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'll look over, Ricky. I think at a high level, I've had a lot of friends who throw from the younger generation, throw a little bit of shade for us living in Littleton, and then they come down and they're like, this is freaking cute. And then they come down more. And like anybody who lives south of Denver knows that like downtown Littleton's a great spot for a date night out or like to go. And so
Yeah.
it's a lure and a charm piece of the area. And what I'd hate to see is for it to like not get the investment it needs and then for that to go away. Cause like I just think that runs a risk of us becoming a pretty isolated community where we're not attracting a lot of people from outside Littleton. Where right now we are, but I think a lot of that does come from like the downtown charm and the capture. So I do think this is timely and relevant, and I would hate to see downtown continue to deteriorate. And I think that drives economic activity, again, like broader than the area itself. It brings people down here for more of the day. It captures them in, it makes people want to live here, and then they spend money in like all of these different business areas. So I think it's very important, and as much as having not as much funding makes your job hard and planning and everything hard, like I do think there are some like staggered approaches to some of this that just makes sense anyway, not that that wasn't part of the plan originally. And specifically some of the things I just kind of thought of while going through that is I think it does make sense to like prioritize downtown. I think it's going to be both a hard sell to citizens as well as just like doesn't make a ton of sense to enable some of those accessory areas without like the target at the middle of it. At the same time, it would be nice to make sure that there are certain pieces of some of those other areas, like Prince Street being my personal vendetta of like, I love biking. I feel like I'm gonna die every time I come out of the neighborhoods and get onto Prince Street and have to go like bike lane-less through potholes and buses and everything else. So enabling maybe parts of some of those secondary projects so that they can really, you know, it doesn't make a ton of sense to have a bunch of better bike infrastructure and bike racks on Main Street and stuff if it's still pretty inaccessible for people to get there through some of the connecting roads and things like that.
Yeah, Council Member Reichert made that point about, you know, looking at making sure we were thinking about the entire district and in the plan, if you look at the final recommendations, there are some spotted areas that we also make some smaller recommendations and outside of just so we have major projects and minor projects identified. But yeah, when you get into the overall, you know, the cost adds up. And when you start to split things out like that and you have multiple mobilizations, it gets tricky and it's tough to navigate. But yes, I mean, ideally, that would be fantastic to be able to start to improve the entire area. I mean, especially from a sidewalk perspective, we have a huge need there. And if you tune in Tuesday night, we'll give a snapshot of really where our capital program sits and what that greater need is citywide for a lot of these other priorities and why we are at this kind of tipping point for looking at these additional funding levers. Our pay-as-you-go strategy isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
We don't have enough capacity and that need is just growing and growing. And it's just going to continue to compound on itself year after year if we don't start to address some of these things.
Yeah. No, I think you hit a point too, and if I could guide council in any direction, you get past a point too where it becomes so far gone that then it's an even harder lift, and then you know the businesses have started to leave, and people stop coming as much, and then it just doesn't make sense to do. So
Sure.
it is something that definitely needs like to stay ahead on it. So I appreciate that perspective. Yeah.
I'm curious, I just want to, like, longer term questions, and if they're out of scope, literally like, out of scope, ignore me. I was gonna think through and looking at the slides, like a lot of the, like reinvestment from like private businesses was more of like housing, hotels, things like that. I guess a couple of things. One is that more of a longer term vision for just like where the economic growth for downtown will kind of land. And then I guess like two, if that's the case, like how does that play into more like the longer term sustainability and like how, like, again, probably thought of like, is this like something that can scale to match that increased demand in like traffic via car, or the materials or things used as more like pedestrian friendly, like
Sure.
will that like kind of impact based off of like with that increased traffic, it kind of wears out faster, and I kind of thinking through a longer term like sustainment of like that downtown like Main Street corridor.
Yeah, great questions. And those are things that we're exploring as part of that economic impact study to further understand. So with the economic specialists that we're working in, we're actually gonna do some modeling around some different catalytic scenarios. And so we'll next month or early October, we'll be sitting down to really identify what those scenarios potentially could be. And so then they'll start to model some different things. And then what a phase, if we were to fully build out a phase one, what that could look like. And so that's the creative industry, you know, hotel, what types of things could potentially come downtown. As for the impacts to traffic, all of that, there are always considerations, and there are always ripple effects with what happens outside of the area. One of the things that was explored at one point was removing all traffic off of Main Street. That quickly went away. Just because we have such a high demand. There's 9,000 vehicles that come through every day on Main Street. One of our worst Santa Fe and Bowles is it scores as a D in terms of backup. I mean, that queuing distances of 1,000 feet at your peak times. And CDOT has identified that intersection for improvements on their planning environmental linkages study, but we have no idea when that will occur. Those improvements would have massive impacts to whatever happens in downtown. But if, let's say, we were to move all traffic off of Main Street, that traffic would have to be absorbed in other places. So you're looking at intersection improvements all around the area, which gets costly, and potentially adding additional stoplights or traffic signals, and you know, that's upwards of $2 million an intersection in some cases. And so anytime you have those soft diversions, even there are impacts. And so that would have to be modeled and studied, and we'd have to understand truly what that would look like. But we don't do this type of work typically in the city, and so going through this exercise, and I mean, I came into the city and said we don't have enough budget for this process, and so we're starting off a new sub-area plan for Littleton Boulevard, and we have a much healthier budget for that planning process. But we needed to do a lot more analysis for all of this, and that just requires more funding to be able to do that. And so if we move into the next steps, then hopefully we can hit all that. But the economic impact study, to your questions, there's going to be a lot more that comes out of that. And so we will have the results of that towards the end of the year. So I'm happy to come back and share that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the follow-up there.
I know that was a long-winded response.
No, I was just like, part of the reason why I was thinking is, even considering like low emission zones and thinking through of like a much more pedestrian friendly, like how do you maybe not eliminate, but like decrease or just kind of like incentivize like alternative modes of transportation. And so obviously also is probably a revenue source if you have a low emission zone, very good. But I get it was just like kind of like considerations of that, especially thinking more of like 15, 20 years down the road, like how do you kind of prevent like a current situation from like reoccurring, and that was really the
great point. Any other questions?
I mean, I'll just do the generic pitch. Is there anything that we could provide, you know, kind of take home homework and like more structured feedback for, or especially I've been trying to like figure out more groups to be able to provide voices and like outreach to. So are there any places and input in this process, whether now or in the coming year?
I'll defer to the council member.
Perspective.
I feel like a lot of the decision making on the council right now is not about whether we like the plan, but how to figure out how to pay for it. Because what Adrian mentioned, I think we have a kind of a pile of different capital projects that we have to do. And we're testing out our community's willingness to take on different forms of debt because we haven't kind of done that for a while. And so, you know, part of what's valuable is just your being able to talk to people about kind of these decisions that we're making, and because they're going to be whatever we do, there'll be inflammatory voices that suggest that we're being reckless with the city's character and money and all those other things. You know, in some ways, we've kind of decided there'll be another round of when we figure out how to pay for this, there'll be another round of decisions around kind of what does the final design look like, given what the council's willing to put on the table for it. And so that'll be a place to engage in this conversation. I think you know, and then we've got some other future conversations that Pam brought up around what do we do with this Geneva Village and how do we move forward with that. And so I guess I'm saying there's other conversations that are a little more ripe to kind of provide your perspective on. This will be ripe for kind of not redesign, but tweaking once we figure out the final budget. But just, you know, being out there and because to be able to talk to people about, you know, at least how the decisions were made, and you'll see that there could be some really big decisions made at the next study session. So, and the crazy thing will be then we'll have a new council come.
That's fun transition.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, we're getting at least one new member.
Yep.
And one person changes can be a big change. And there's possibilities of three new members. So.
Yeah, we know we have a new service center facilities, our Bellevue, our Public Works service center just north of here. We have several facilities that are way beyond their useful life. Two facilities, one from 1948, the other from 1964, I believe, that has undergone one round of renovation that we still have undetermined timeline for. But either way, you know, we have situations where they don't have electrical to be able to get vehicles out to go serve a community. So those are really big, that's a big deal. But council did approve using COPs for replacement of those two facilities. And so our next step is issuing a request for proposal for a basis of design. And so that basis of design is really how we're going to basically figure out exactly what we want this building to have in it, what are the sustainability requirements, what are the architectural engineering requirements, what's the program, who's going to be in this building, all of that stuff. And so when we issue a full design RFP, it's going to cut down a lot of that rework, and it'll help it make it a much more efficient process. So we'll be moving on that pretty soon. We're in the we're about to advertise. So yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward.
Yeah, but that's another major one. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. No, I'm not going to editorialize anymore. I feel like
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really, I think, great context for us all to have, and everyone who's not here as well. And yeah, throughout the coming year or onwards, if there's anything that we could help provide feedback on or reach out to other people to solicit feedback and community engagement on, definitely just keep us in the loop.
I'm more than happy to come back anytime. So
Cool.
Chris, please keep me updated. I'm happy to come tell you about my personal life. Share
not your wedding.
Yeah,
Careful, you signed up for it.
Did you say, was it Chick-fil-A that you had?
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A. Okay.
It's great.
Fantastic.
Didn't last very long, but thank you for all the feedback and the questions. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you for the time tonight.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
presentation. So you're welcome to hang out if you want to hear the rest of the meeting, but if you need to split, then
I'm gonna try to
Welcome
go
to do
make
so.
bedtimes. So
there you go. There you go. Well, thank you again.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Adrian.
you.
Of course.
Appreciate the switch and everything.
Yeah, I think everything's okay downstairs.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go check it again.
Thank you so
The
much.
chairs are not a straight line.
I'll get the protractor out
Yeah. We'll check on you when we're done.
this evening. Thank you.
All right. So we'll move into our next agenda item, which is past study session follow-up on housing needs and safer streets. Bobby, I know you have provided a pretty robust follow-up via email, so I'll kind of turn it over to you if you want to kick it off.
Did you do a summary for everybody?
No, that's why I set up YouTube videos.
Oh,
I mean, I think this was intended, originally to be the Geneva Village study session, which was more relevant to like the quarterly goals and stuff, but I know that got pushed. So I sent out I think the one on whatever the early August one was, one of the housing needs and safer streets was still very interesting content and background for just us to have.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a ton of direct action steps on it and stuff, but wanted to have the placeholder here still to see if anybody had any thoughts, discussion items, things we wanted to follow up with other boards or perspectives or things like that on.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that always kind of sits in the back of my head is the safer streets. And I think that sits in the back of mostly everyone's head, especially with how connected it is. And, when we talk about like Project Downtown, right, that comes up a lot when we talk about, different improvements, whether that's infrastructure or, in our last quarter, talking about the waste disposal, right? I mean, I think that, in some capacity comes up about a safer street when you have, 12 different organizations picking up trash within the city. That's a lot of vehicles, against pedestrians and cyclists and everything. So for me, that's when that kind of always comes up, and I know that continues to get more attention or continued attention. But when I think about it, it's like, well, what's that attention going to look like, right? Where is that driving towards? What's the objective there? So that's just one that kind of sticks with me. And then also, walking a stroller with 2 children and it barely fitting on the sidewalk and a dog kind of frustrated me the other day. So that's my personal vendetta. But again, right, I think, it boils down to safety and thinking about the improvements we made for like bike paths for schools and things like that. So that's the one that stands out when I think about those two though.
Here's one where I think there may be room for you guys to consider engagement, because with the safer streets, we've really started with our first protected bike lanes, and and then we had our first kind of complete streets design in front of Euclid Middle School, and maybe to consider is I have an email on my computer just from constituents complaining about those changes, and so it's a bit of a contentious thing, and so I think anytime over the next year that you can weigh in on, hey, we've looked at these bike lanes, we've looked at this complete streets, this is our impression of whether this should be part of our future, or we understand why this may not fit with our future. I think there is and having your perspective of if this is your perspective of like, I really would like the city to focus on reinvesting in sidewalks and more high pedestrian or wherever you want us to invest.
Sure. Right.
So, but that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's going to continue to be an issue because by definition, I mean, the Safer Streets has the beauty of it is how organizational within it, but there's a huge component that's just changing our infrastructure. And if you have a perspective on that, sharing that perspective anytime in the next, I mean, I don't think you need to do it like tomorrow, but just, and you could ask, it may be very interesting to consider asking the transportation staff to kind of do a field trip. They're doing a walking tour on Saturday of Galati and the TMB. In fact, you could ask them to invite you on the TMB's field trip, because the TMB is going to have a field trip in a month. So,
yeah, I think we talked about.
And that might be a really interesting thing. Just to for you to share in your quarterly things, if that's one of your priorities.
Yeah.
Because this kind of the complete streets feels like an ongoing process, where the Project Downtown is with the council. And me, as part of that council, has definitely kind of staggered it. We've kind of slowed it down as we kind of did financing. Whereas the complete streets, what's staggering it mostly is like having the right idea of where the right places are for infrastructure to go in.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, I mean, when I think about that, it seems like it's that kind of that culture change, right? That is the real like kind of anchor to a lot of this that slows it down. If people aren't familiar with it, the street is closed off for 8 weeks or however long it was that I had to detour around, but the end result is that now we have something on Euclid that is safer and updated that we're testing. And so I think that's where that walking tour is interesting. And I know, Bob, we talked a couple months ago about having Transportation Mobility Board kind of come and see what they're working on too, to see if there's things that we can initiate together.
Yeah, I mean, I've got their schedule for the next few months. I think if anybody, I don't want to own that collaboration, not because I don't want to, but because I'm trying to set up other collaborations with other groups and boards.
And you and them are my two board liaison committees. They are really, really focused on getting ready to update the transportation mobility plan. And there'll be absolutely places that we can think about when to insert you. But I agree, I can't do that, right? I can tell you what they're talking about, but I can't insert.
We have to have that conversation.
Yeah, I know they have a number of upcoming things on their schedule, and they were very interested in sending us kind of their monthly high-level bullet point updates and things upcoming.
Yeah.
I know Michael's big into transportation and stuff too, so I don't want to put that on him while he's not here, but if anybody wants to kind of own that as a collaborative space, not saying you have to represent everything we do in transport, but just to stay on top of that. I think that's a great area. I think the fact that the transportation plan is getting updated, it makes sense for us to weigh in on something in that at some point. And I'm liking the idea of doing a little next gen review of kind of the projects from the past year and ongoing.
You said Michael had expressed interest in this?
Michael has expressed interest in safer streets. I don't know if he's expressed interest in wanting to be the point person in collaboration with the board. So that's where I might be overstepping, but that can be something we follow up with them on.
We'll follow up with them on that.
Yeah, Kenna and Jeff from that group sent me their schedule for September, October, and November, and said that people are welcome to kind of reach out to them and join at any time, but having somebody be the point person for just a monthly update would be that'd be helpful in that.
Are either of you interested in that?
Kind of.
Kind
I wouldn't want to just.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll put you down as an alternative.
Yeah, that works perfectly.
With that.
Yeah, I can follow. We can take that. We can figure that out over the next month or even next meeting of again establishing kind of the right communication cadence and stuff with them and who wants to own that. But I'll try to loop Michael into that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I like that partnership. Okay.
Cool. That feels good. Any other thoughts on decisions? I thought the housing study was super interesting. I don't have immediate follow-up steps, recommendations, guidance on that. I thought it was great context to keep in the back of mind as we think about development of kind of this area, especially thinking Geneva Village and anything housing related. But yeah, otherwise, just cool.
That's about how I walked away with it too. I thought it was good information to have and kind of needed to sit on it a little bit longer. So, but thank you for sharing that out, Bob.
Yeah. Gonna do it again with the study session next week.
Fantastic.
Send in YouTube clips.
Keep it
It's gonna be-
Honestly,
Is that what you do? You take a little clip? Do you take them out of do you take the clips or do you take them,
I just pull the timestamp from like the YouTube videos and
do you like keep notes, like start here during the
you can
meeting?
send a link that starts right at the exact time in the YouTube video.
Robert's being stupid.
Check out this quote.
Yeah.
It's going viral.
He's never getting reelected after that.
We didn't have M&Ms that time.
What did you say?
So you didn't have M&Ms in our last meeting. So.
Yeah.
He's out.
Yeah, I was like, please actually move this away from me because I already had like 5 things.
You are all just loving this.
Yes.
I'll be honest, in my time on this board, no one has ever reached for candy throughout the meeting, so.
Oh, is that like
Maybe
unacceptable?
No,
It's very
encouraged.
hurtful.
I'm
No,
saying,
no,
I think the
Yes,
smaller table is helping what.
No, it makes the conversation more intimate. This is lovely.
I don't know, the difference between the fifth and sixth candy is a lot less between the first and the second, so.
It's true, it all starts again. No, that's awesome. Well, yeah, I think that's good. So I'll reach out to Michael just about the communication piece with them, and then Alex, I'll put you kind of as an alternative, and actually I'll just loop you in, so
Sounds
however
great.
you two want to mash that out. I'm fine with it, but I think it's good that we have that connection. Cool. All right, so quarterly board goal and specific goal planning. Our last quarter, we put a heavy focus on kind of how we wanted to do some research and share, from the perspective of NGAB around environment. And that kind of resulted in us having the waste diversion study and resulted in a letter. So I want to just first of all thank you everyone for your participation, organizing that and sending it out. I think that's awesome. And when I think about when we come together and what we are seeking to do is to kind of do the research in these monthly meetings and then provide a recommendation on how we see different things that City Council is facing with the lens of NGAB. So big thank you to you all for the efforts to get us there. So if you haven't given yourself a pat on the back, give yourself a pat on the back. Anyone tuning in online, is probably hitting that clapping emoji right now. So big thanks there. But with that, right, we're going to continue moving forward. What we want to do with the Next Generation Advisory Board is keep setting our sights on what else is coming down. And so we got a new quarter, so there's some things that we can kind of focus on. I want to open it up to see if there are things that individually we feel very passionate about, in terms of how do we want to, advise City Council, and just a reminder, some of our areas are around things like housing, safety, economic development, infrastructure, and environment's off the list now because we did such an awesome job our first quarter out of the gate. So are there any passion areas that people are like, I really would like us to, research this and, make recommendations from there?
I think this next round of comment on Project Downtown is an excellent choice.
You like that one? Tell me more. Sorry, I'm setting you up here.
Yeah, no, understandable. So given where we are in the project, it's a good time to give input. It's a pretty critical future point. We had our previous trees for 40 years. If we end up with new trees, they're probably going to be there for hopefully more than 40 years. And just the maintaining downtown Littleton is a pretty critical area for the foreseeable future, basically.
Yeah.
And given where we are in the process, it's going to be a pretty critical, when it comes down to, well, we have this much money, we want to do this much stuff, something's not going to fit in the pot. That's going to be a very, very critical part of the conversation.
The conversation that's going to happen on Tuesday is going to be, I hope, it's going to have two components. One is where the council has disagreed is on whether we use certificates of participation to pay for downtown, which allows us to start immediately, or whether we use general obligation bond, which requires a vote, which could not be any sooner than next November. And so I'm hoping that decision gets made this week. That there's even some conversation that if we do a GO bond, it would have to be 2 years out, which is because it's just not the package is not ready. So I think you're absolutely right. If you want council to move forward on this quickly, I think sending that kind of message is valuable, but I'm afraid it's almost overripe in that it depends on what happens at the study session. And if there's a clear direction from the council, to do COPs, it'll go quickly. And it'll be valuable for you to say, we think that was a good decision. And if we don't go forward with COPs, you could say that you guys made the wrong decision, or right decision, that's valuable. So I'm just saying, this week will be really important, and then after that, depending on what decisions are made, it may or may not be a right kind of thing that you can participate in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wonder if maybe that, lends us to be a little scrappier and think more of, maybe there's the business chamber to have conversations, around that of, what are they doing for, Project Downtown, and how can as the next gen, help kind of voice, right? What's missing, right? When I talked about that third space, right? Why is it that a younger person isn't hanging out downtown? Right? Is it that there's not the right offering? Is it the hours? Is it that, I don't know, I'm not young
Well, it
anymore,
is
so-
50%. Well, it is 50% bar by volume,
Right.
so.
Exactly. So right away we eliminate, large population, but just thinking about, if we do start to consider, Project Downtown, are there other avenues that we can start to pull on? And then obviously, the study session next week will kind of tell where that should push future conversations if we decide to pursue it. I think it's an interesting idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the
that way.
chamber that represents the businesses, and then you have the LDDA, which represents kind of, they're a mechanism for raising money and investing in downtown. And so both of them are, I think, interesting audiences for that conversation.
Yeah.
Personally, I think they're not maximizing the Pokemon Go crew that goes through every time there's a competition. So,
Blaster.
Most Saturdays and Sundays.
yeah, I mean, there's tons of people down there, and they're not being touched at all.
Well,
Driscoll hates it.
Huh?
Driscoll spoke against Pokemon.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I know he doesn't. He's on
There's
campus.
still.
I mean,
Famous.
are we still tentative to have LDDA, somebody from them come talk in October?
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I don't wanna punt goals, but I think knowing that what we heard about tonight is loose or at least conditional a little bit on what happens next week. We are still potentially trying to learn more about Geneva Village, that's an ongoing project. We have LDDA, I don't think we have to set a concrete goal of what we want to advise on just from this tonight. We can also move forward with some researching, some thinking about, come together next time for that presentation, kind of piece information across this general economic and downtown / Littleton Boulevard / Geneva Village extended area and think about what makes sense for us to fit in. I think we have a good future opportunity to comment on some of these final design pieces, potentially provide council feedback based on how Tuesday goes, things like that. And this is important context to have for having those other discussions and stuff too. So if the takeaway from this meeting is continue researching to figure out where it makes sense for us to comment, because I think it's still a little unclear at this exact point.
Well,
I think there will be a good future opportunity to comment on final design and to seek out potentially community opinion and stuff on that stuff, but that isn't super tangible at this exact moment.
I'm sorry for talking too much, but kind of build off what Pam's talking about. The Geneva Village kind of final presentation right now is scheduled for the 23rd. And that is, we're at essentially, what I believe is that the ULI report is going to kind of establish the agenda for the future conversation, and kind of be the topics that we talk about. And having you guys weigh in on those topics would be an easy way to get your voice in early, particularly if you're critical of things, right? Or prioritize things. Of the things we saw, this is the one that's most exciting. I think that would be, and kind of have the theme of we want to talk, your quarterly goal is talk about the downtown area.
Yeah.
And then you get both of them. So I apologize if I'm.
No,
I
I
think
didn't
that's
see
really
that got put on for September, so that's great.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense then to come back in October. We will have had the context of this, we will have an LDDA talk, and I'll send out that as a study session for us to review as well. And that's 3 pieces that we can kind of triangulate on and put together of what makes sense for us to comment on, what do we want to see happening between these different areas and things like that. And we could probably come up with a pretty concrete goal by the end of next time.
Oh yeah, easily.
Not if you
I
did
think-
historic preservation.
I think if anything, that's the whole point of what we're trying to do, right? Is make sure we're getting the right people in to talk about it so we can formulate, that, recommendation from our board. So I'm on board with you there. I think that makes a lot of sense of, we've got a lot of information that's coming. And so, it seems like we're looking at this being kind of a general area where we want to maybe lend some attention. And, if next month we look at it and we say, no, that's okay. The point is that we're doing something, we're looking at it to make sure. And then even then, right, we can still do something with that and let city council know that like, this is something that, there's not enough information at this time, that we don't feel comfortable to make any advisements or anything like that. So there's still stuff that comes out of whether we pursue or hit pause or.
Feels like we're building in the right direction.
It seems
so
like it,
gathering
right?
some of those pieces and
Yeah, totally.
And I have a question. So during a study session on Tuesday, let's say you guys come with the financing kind of position, is that like at that point a decision, or is it something that still will then go to a council vote?
It's a pretty, so what, the interesting thing is what the staff is looking for at study sessions, and this was the same thing on the school board, is there a majority of agreement if we bring it to the council? And so I think about staff as trying to figure out what the council will agree to so that they don't put things in front of us that are super divisive. Like they want to know so they'll be feeling us out for kind of what would you agree to if we brought it to you. And, people can change their minds after those, and I've changed my mind after those conversations. But it's kind of it definitely is a direction setting kind of thing of what happens there.
That's a great question.
That's a good question. I have one forward and I have one last thing I want to say. Sorry.
No, great.
Okay, so with the election, regardless of what happens, you'll probably get a new council liaison because I'm going to try to shift over to Dr. Cog. And
Cool. That's awesome. I'm just giving you. I'm mean mugging you because I don't want you to leave. But
you can give me a hard time. It's completely okay. But I just and that'll be probably, if that happens, will be December, January.
Okay.
So.
okay, great.
good for you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I thank you, but.
Good for you, bad for us. We'll be
Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe whoever comes next could have better candy selection.
I don't think they can
I
see
find
my-
that
I mean, you want
I have a
the
pile
stomach
over
of
here.
Jeremiah over here.
Like,
so-
right in
I'll
front
tell
of
you
the
what,
camera.
whoever replaces me, I'll warn them that will be the expectation.
There you go.
Perfect.
Love that.
I love it. So
Kind of follow-up question, sorry, would it still be beneficial, like, post Tuesday, coming with recommendation or like an opinion regarding the financing for Project Downtown and like the direction you guys are potentially leaning? or-
Yeah, absolutely, it would be, I think it would absolutely be okay. Because I think the decisions are gonna be kind of go fast, go slow. And the go slow decision, well, I would encourage you to kind of listen to the whole conversation because you'll hear a lot of different kind of perspectives because even some of us agree on the decision to justify it in different ways. And so, like this resonated with me, we think that that's a great thing. I think that's, we feel like this is an important 40-year investment, whatever your perspective. So we really look forward to third spaces. Those are all good.
Yeah.
But I just, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll read it no matter what you say.
thanks. Appreciate that. All it takes is one domino. All right. Well, good stuff. So next one, creation of NGAB feedback comment form for outreach and community input. Bobby, I know you and I.
Yeah, this was basically just spread by Donald from Littleton Young Professionals. I was gonna attend an event with them. Didn't quite make it. Might try again later in September. And he was like, hey, where can we have people send feedback
Yeah.
directly to NextGen? And I was like, my email? But there's gotta be a better way. So
Did you get a chance to look at the QR code?
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work,
No.
really.
It
Nothing.
says it's paused.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
That's what
Okay.
it did for me.
All right. Well,
Could you ask Chris?
you remember the survey we created last year that we were going to distribute for like Math on Main? Do you remember that? Do you have that,
That link,
or even just,
I never had access to
you
it.
never had access
No
to
one
it?
sent
Okay.
me the link.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanna send me the link, I can
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, well, I'll talk through it while that's kind of ongoing. So, what we were doing last year, was we were trying to put on an event, and we wanted to gather some feedback from participants and also just to use it at different, social gatherings so people could kind of, provide their input on, what do they know about Next Generation? What are areas that attract them to, the city, and then what are things that they'd like to see more or less of. So we spent a good amount of time drafting that. And so I think that might be something that we should consider kind of bringing back to life or unpausing. And what it would allow us to do is gather some data from other citizens about what is their knowledge about this board, and what are things that are interesting to them, right? So our big focus when we were trying to do this event was what draws you to downtown, or why do you go to events? Why don't you go to events? And so it sounds like with kind of the outreach that we're doing, this might be an opportunity for us to get that feedback going. And see if it still makes sense. I mean, if it doesn't, once I get that over to you, Chris, we can tear it apart. We can distribute it, see what happens. But I'll make sure that you all get a copy of the kind of rough items that we created. And I just wanted to say that our city council member said that the survey was well designed for that.
Did I?
Yeah, it was a highlight night.
Wow.
Last year, so.
High
I'm
praise.
sure, I write surveys for a living, so,
That's why I had to bring it up again.
yeah, well,
It's
you,
like,
yes, I remember saying that.
it's-
Deep in my
Yeah,
heart.
thanks, all right.
Yeah, if we could get that work, I think that's great. Again, I'm happy to have people email like city email for now if anyone has any like pressing stuff. But yeah, just what he was looking for is mostly like trying to be able to distribute to that group, just a place where people could put ideas, feedback, or other things where they think that voice could be more amplified than if they were to just submit it into the void of the city email or to council or other things like that. And I think that's a great role for us as a board to try to amplify those voices and things. So having a system in place that isn't just a personal email probably could go a long ways. I didn't do a lot of extra outreach to different groups and stuff last month because I got busy, but that's gonna happen this month. So yeah, that'd be great to have just some form of link, anything.
Yeah.
For people to be able to distribute more widely.
I do have like a strong opinion on this part though.
Yeah, please share.
Both constructive and also supportive. I
Sure.
think it's like frankly a great idea. I seen that like just happen a lot and sometimes you always have to get like great constructive feedback and also just words. It just depends. But I guess like where I would be really hesitant and like push really heavy is like how like what is the value prop that we're gonna provide by having this avenue and making sure that it's both useful but also we're taking it and actioning on the feedback in like a productive way. So I kind of think of like how much you know about like Next Generation Advisory Board. Like for me that I see like the pros and cons of like why that might be a great thing to lean into, but also thinking about it of is that the problem that we're trying to solve, or is it more of an additional avenue of where like, okay, hey, like we have a bit more structure of like, here are the things that we're actually trying to tackle, or like maybe here are some like focus areas that we've kind of determined, like then kind of pulling from like the community, like which one should we focus on, which one should we have more intent on, or any additional like commentary there. I guess it's like, I just want to make sure we're making a distinction between having a forum where we will get, I don't know, like 100 responses, and then somebody then has to go and then sift through and process
That's probably
that.
generous.
Or-
Yeah, it's like 100.
I mean, that would be
It'd
ideal.
be great, yeah.
But then, but making sure like it's something that's actually like it's a resource that has like a purpose, and it's something that we're actually able to like then taking action on versus just having like something that's in there that like kind of fizzles out. Like again, like, how do we think through that long-term sustainability?
Yeah, totally. And I think your concerns are completely valid, right? And I think, you'll have to spend a little bit since I've looked at the survey, but I think the intent was to have it kind of be evergreen. So it definitely has a larger lens of, the focus wasn't necessarily heavy urban bus. it was kind of just as like a, do you know what we do as a contact, right? I think a lot of, our boards and commissions maybe, like Bobby was saying, it goes to a city email and never gets checked, and so how do we kind of drum up that attention? And then also, we act as those conduits to the citizens. So I think that's kind of where we initially, or where I would like that to be, to kind of address that, because I think it is a good concern, right? Like, it's not just, do you know about us, but more of like, what are things that, are pain points for you that we can help guide, and here's where we're focusing. But again, right, it changes every year, because this is not the same board that we were last year. We have, new members, new interests and things like that. So it might be that we refresh it too, and I'm more than happy to do that, because I want it to be, to your point, impactful, and let people kind of feel like they have that chance to talk to us without talking to you directly and in your email.
And follow-up question, like,
Yeah.
I think this would be a great tool, but kind of think about the process, like, are people just reaching out to the city email address today, and is there a reason why we don't get those responses?
I think they're reaching out to Bobby right now.
Okay.
I think people assume that you either go talk to city council or find some random or hopefully relevant person's city email on the website and send that stuff in, or do click fix, depending on what like the stuff is. But from Donald, from talking to a few of my neighbors who are roughly in our next gen-ish demographic, there's just a lot of like, we don't know, we could find where to send stuff. We don't know where to send stuff to actually have it like potentially be taken seriously, or anything like kind of like dialogue stuff. Like, again, click fix. I'm not looking for people to tell us that there's a pothole in front of their house. We have a great system for that already. Like that, I think click fix works great in my experience. But stuff around, hey, kind of struggling with understanding what's happening in the city as a whole, and what communication is like, and what the city's prioritizing, things like that. Or, hey, we'd really like to provide some of this input on like safer streets. Like, obviously some of those surveys are ongoing and stuff right now, but it's not always directly obvious to people where to go. And I think especially for younger people, there's very understandably so an aversion to actually like going to some of the existing formats, namely city council meetings, and actually like speaking and engaging in that way. So I think opening up another format, even if it's a little redundant with other places, could offer value.
Yeah.
Could just give it, again, like in the immediate sense, I'm really just looking forward, as we're trying to establish, as I'm trying to like establish a touch point with those little and young professionals, it's like, it's nice to just tell people like, hey, if you don't have any direct feedback for me right now, you can still think of stuff and send it. Hey, if you remember that I was here 6 months from now and have feedback for the city and want to direct that to this board as an amplification of that voice, and like, then it's just there. So yeah, I don't see it being a super widespread, huge feedback channel for like the city as a whole or other things. I think it's pretty targeted to our board and like direct outreach on things like that. To that end, having it be updated with kind of high level ongoing goals and stuff wouldn't be the worst idea, just to prompt people for relevant points.
Yeah, well, and links to different council meetings and agendas that are coming up. I mean, that would require very detailed work, but you could still kind of just provide a blanket of check these resources. I think it's kind of sounds like a standard organization issue where there's 5 different ways to do something and 3 of them are wrong. But you still do it anyway. I'm speaking from experience, but but point being, right? I mean, I think we don't want to crowd it, but I think we want to just kind of give it a little more direction, so people who maybe don't know where to start can start.
I think it makes it a little disingenuous if we try to say we want to talk to people for feedback, and one of our core goals is to be kind of a pass through of information and stuff. And I think it makes it a little disingenuous, or just a little superficial might be the better word, to try to connect with these different groups on one-off occasions and then go, thanks. Like, you can't reach us unless you come to our once a month meeting and like try to do public comment there. Like, having a actual like channel feels relevant to that. At least that's how I think about it when I'm thinking about sending an email like again to these people and stuff like that. It's like, well, I don't know. Get back to me if you want.
Yeah, well, it brings it on to one area.
Yeah.
But I think these are great questions.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we wouldn't be thinking about it to this level.
Sorry, I'm gonna be very passionate about this one.
Please do.
And it's something because like I do think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure like it's very like actionable and something that is gonna provide value, especially since like it's not just like the channel, but it's also thinking through like who's gonna manage it, how we're gonna make sure like information gets to the right spot, things like that, and then also like who is the audience? Like it's just something that's out in the void and just kind of like hope for the best, or is it something that's a bit more like targeted to actually get that feedback and actually kind of get that direction? And like I obviously will more prefer the latter, but of course it requires some coordination and like
Totally.
kind of specificity.
Totally. And those are things that we didn't really talk about when we developed it. It was really just, we were gonna try and have it ready for this event through a QR code, and then we were gonna hopefully get lots of people. And then neither of those things transpired. So we didn't get to that point of talking about who manages the data. It's all through, I think it goes through Qualtrics, is their system. So, very secure system anyway. And I think, we would just have to talk to whoever owns that dashboard to pull that result. So that might be something that, if it's the chair does it, if it's Chris does it, right? So, and then we get it distributed to all that could be a thing. But maybe what we do, because I think these are great talking points, especially if we talk about how do we kind of get feedback. Maybe we just add that as an agenda item for next month and do a review. We can send the link in advance for you all to review the items, and then we'll come back and say, scrap this, change this. Then we can kind of go through those, more governance things that we're talking about of who does what.
I was really kind of asked if that could be like a secondary quarterly goal. Maybe not like not this quarter, but like January or something. But just thinking through like how can we I think it has like the potential to be a very strong like communication source. Like how do we think about it and set it up for success from the start and like make it like hopefully exist beyond like the tenure of this board, but something that can then be like revisited and adjusted as like the board changes in the future. So
I love that idea.
Yeah,
I love that idea. Let's just keep that conversation going. So we'll make sure that you all can look at the survey and then provide any feedback and changes that you'd like to see or anything like that. And then we'll just do a working session next month and say this is where we want it to go, and with the objective to make it be evergreen. To kind of what you're thinking of to outlive everyone on this board. Cool beans.
I feel like you guys weren't expecting that level of a conversation on the feedback.
No, I love it. No, bring it on.
I was like,
Alright, do it right.
Yeah.
I do it a lot of my day to day.
I love it. I think those are these are good questions, right? That if we don't talk about them, then we're just gonna assume everything's good.
Yeah.
And then we'll say, I don't know why people aren't, filling out the survey, and it's all over the place, and it's in Bobby's email address, but he's locked out and we can't look at him. So I think those are great questions. Super good conversation. Cool. All right, last one. Standing items. So future council meetings, study sessions of interest and relevant activities from other boards. We talked kind of indirectly about that, right? About there's a study session next week. I think especially around the topic that we are interested in pursuing, something around Project Downtown. If you're able, be there. If not, listen in. And then also I think we'll just continue to kind of drive, where those interests lay and where we can be present. I know Bobby's been pretty heavy in attending all these different meetings and providing the feedback. So thanks, Bobby, for doing that. It's super helpful. Again, right, like these are things we want to kind of be mindful of what's upcoming, right? So we can kind of gear some of those conversations. So Bobby, I know you had kind of expressed an interest in this being, an item that is standing. I don't know if there's other things you want me to add.
No, I mean, I think again, that stuff's already like come up in natural course of conversation, but if anyone has anything else of interest, I think it's good for me to have that as a standing item agenda.
Totally.
So I actually look at these other board agendas and actually put the effort in like doing those things. So I've got nothing beyond the study sessions that we've already talked about.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know I've said it before, but if there are directions that you feel very passionate and strongly about, talk to Bobby and me about it. Because I think if we can make those connections of what are other boards doing, right, kind of build that energy, the collaboration is huge there. So, just because we're talking a lot about Project Downtown doesn't mean that we can't explore other subtopics or other areas of interest too. So, but again, right, we'll do that in every meeting and make sure that we're kind of connecting and not duplicating work, and we're stronger in numbers. So, cool. All right. Well, that brings us to kind of the ending of our meeting. Are there any comments or reports from staff?
No comments from staff today.
All right, council liaison.
I feel like I've commented.
That's how you know we've had a good meeting.
It was a great meeting, but thank you for that, for letting me participate.
Thank you
It's
for
always helpful, so feel free.
Any updates from our members?
Other than you're I'm just really excited personally for like community outreach. I know it's like really critical, like probably like 20 seconds ago, but yeah, I don't know. I just think through like how we can. I know there's just many ways for like about how we can just like leverage that and hopefully build it to a sustainable piece. So
I mean, you guys are the really challenging. You have the biggest challenge of you're representing a demographic group versus an interest, like compared to an arts board. And so this effort to kind of get community input feels both very vague, but also really important. And so the fact that it's a struggle isn't surprising, like, because you're in this, you just have a weird role, a valuable role, but a weird one.
Yeah, I'll just echo, I said it last month, but Longer Tables Littleton, coming up near the end of the month, that's great, get your tickets, that's fun. And yeah, but in that same vein, like if there are other groups, I know we have that as part of the HQ document, planning document, whatever, organizations and stuff. Even if you don't personally want to do the outreach to them, like I'm happy to volunteer myself to do the outreach. I can't manage a bunch of connections at once, but I'll happily do the outreach and try to do that. So keep adding to that list if there's groups, encounters, people, stuff like that that we want to have on our roster of people to reach out to. That's a good, always good background activity for us, I think. That's all I got.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, well, again, I know I said it earlier, but I just also want to just make sure I mention it again, but awesome work this last quarter with all the efforts to develop our recommendation. I think that shows what this board is capable of doing, and we did the research, we came together for the discussion, and we were very thoughtful about that, and in terms of representing the next gen. So again, another big thank you for everything that you all have done, and with that, we will see you on October 2nd. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting.